This is the video for exercise 8. So the first thing we're gonna want to do is open up ArcGIS Pro, and then we're going to click Start Without a Template. In this exercise, we will be going through Symbology and doing more with map layouts. So the first thing we want to do is open up a new map. So insert and then click on new map. Then we want to navigate to add data, find where your exercise 8 folder is, and then insert Indiana shapefile. This will open up the counties and the state outline for Indiana. And now we want to change the map projection. So if we right click map, properties, and then we can change this map name to Indiana, and then go to coordinate systems, projected coordinate system, UTM, North America, NAD 1983, and then UTM zone 16 north, and apply. So after we change the projection system, we want to get rid of the topographic map and the world hill shade. So we can right click, remove, and then right click and remove. Now we want to change the layer symbology to create a chloropleth map. So we can right click the Indiana, go to symbology, and then change this to graduated colors. And then we can change the field to % poverty. And we want to keep classes at 5, and right now we want to keep the natural breaks method on. So we can change the methods. So we can do quantile, and it'll change some of the symbols for the map. And then equal interval, then we'll also change how the map looks, and then standard deviation will also change the symbology. So we want to go back to the natural breaks and then change it to 5 classes. And then you can change the color scheme if you want to. So now we want to change the labels for the % poverty. So we just want to add percentages to the end of each of the numbers. And then we want to make sure that these are continuous. Then click enter, and now that changes the labels. And now we want to create a map layout. So we go to insert, new layout, and then select ANSI portrait letter. And we want to go to map frame, our map, and then find the extent of our map frame. And then to change the position of the state of Indiana on here, we can either press Q, and that'll activate it, and Q to unactivate it, or you can right click and press activate, and you can then change it around and then zoom it in and out. Like that. And then when you're done, press Q, or you can go to layout and then close activation. So now we want to add a map frame. Not a map frame. We want to add a north arrow. So you can select which north arrow you want, and then just a small north arrow on the map. And then we can add our scale bar, and then our legend. And then if we want, then we want to get rid of this map border, so we can double click on the border. Up here where it says map frames, click the drop down, border, and then no color, and then apply. So now we want to edit our legend, so we can double click on our legend. We want to go to where the drop down and then legend, and then we want to change the title of this to %poverty. And now we want to get rid of where it says Indiana and the %poverty here, so we can go to legend items, show properties, and then uncheck layer name and headings. And then we can close this out. Now we want to add a title, so if we go up to graphics and text, we can select the text box and draw this in, and then name the map %poverty by county for Indiana. And then if we want to change the size of the text here, we can double click, text symbol, change the font to Calibri, and then 24 font, and apply. We also want to change the font for the legend, so we can double click the legend, text symbol, and Calibri, and apply. Now we want to add a references for this, so we're going to add another text box, and then the first text we want to credit where this data was retrieved from. So data from US Census 2010, and then you can add your name to this, so by, and then your name. And then we want to change the text for this to Calibri, and then 12-point font, and apply. And then you can move this to where you want this displayed. We also want to change the text for the scale bar, so text symbol, Calibri, and then a 12-point font, and apply. So now your layout is ready to be saved. So we can go to share, export layout, PDF, and then rename your PDF, so to wherever you want to save it to. Exercise 8, and then we want to rename this Indiana underscore chloropleth underscore your name, and then save it. Before you export it, we want to set the DPI to 300, so vertical resolution, set this to 300, and then you can export. So that is for deliverable 1, and then you'll turn in your PDF for your map. Now we want to create a proportional symbol map. So if we go back to our map, we go to View, we can close out the export pane, we go to Catalog pane, and we go to Maps. We can right-click the Indiana map after you open your maps, copy, and then right-click where it says Maps and paste, and then this will paste the new map that we can work with for creating the proportional symbol map. So then we want to open up this map. We can close the other layout, And now we want to change the symbology. So you right click, Symbology, and here we want to use median income. And we want to change our primary symbology to graduated symbols, and then you can change the template for this. So you can change the color you want to use. So you do red, and apply, and that'll change it to red. Or you can change the shape of it. So if you wanted to use squares, you could also use squares. I will use circles. And then we want to change this to 6 classes and use natural breaks again. And then we want to change the field back to median income. And then we want to change the labels for this to include dollar signs and commas. So you can go through and add dollar signs and commas. When you're done with that, we can now create the map layout for this symbol map. So insert, new layout, ANSI portrait. Go to insert, map frame, and then your new Indiana map. And then if we want to change the size of this, press Q. You can zoom in. And then press Q to stop it. And then if you wanted to move back around, you can do this. Go to layout and navigate, and then you can navigate in the layout. We're going to go back to insert, add our north arrow, add our legend, add our scale bar, and then we want to get rid of the map border again. So map frame, border, no color, apply. Change the font of our scale bar and legend. 12 point, apply. Double click on our legend, text symbol, Calibri, apply. And then we can edit our legend. So here, we can call this income. We can name it the title, change the title of the legend to income. And then turn off layer names and headings. And then if we didn't think the legend was the correct size, we can go to convert to graphics. And here we can then change the size of this individually. To median income by county. And then change this to Calibri font, 24 point, apply. And then we want to add our reference and our name. So data from US Census 2010, and then by your name. And then this is ready to turn in. And now we want to add another new map for the final part. So new map. Then we want to go to add data under map, and then add the county shapefile. And then we want to change the projection of this map to projected coordinate systems, continental, North America, and then US contiguous Lambert conformal conic, and apply. And then we can get rid of the topographic map and the hillshade map. Now we want to change the symbology for the counties. So we go to right click counties, symbology, change this to graduated colors, and then you can choose which method you want to do, but our field will be per GT55B, or the percent of the population over the age of 55, and we want to set our classes to 6, and then if we want we can change the color, and then we want to change the labels to percentages rounded to the nearest decimal place. And now we can create the map layout. So this time we'll go to new layout and then landscape instead of portrait. Insert your map frame. And then the Q to make sure this shows up well. And then we can get rid of the border by double clicking the border, no color. Then we can add our north arrow, our scale bar, and then the legend. And then we can also add a title. You can then title this whatever you want or whatever makes sense. Resize this, double click the text box, change it to text symbol, change this to Calibri, and then 24 point font. And then we can work with our legend and scale bar now. So double click the scale bar, text symbol, Calibri, 12 point, close, and then our legend. Change this to percent of population over 55. Show properties, layer name, headings is checked off, and then add your reference text box. So data from US Census 2010, and then your name. And now you can export this to wherever you want to have this saved. So, and that is the end of exercise 8.